There are moments in life when nothing is necessarily falling apart, yet something inside feels different, a kind of heaviness that is difficult to explain because it is not tied to one single event. It is not always visible on the outside, and yet it shapes everything on the inside. The way thoughts form, the way emotions linger, the way even simple moments feel slightly slower, slightly more distant, as if the heart is carrying more than it can easily name. It can begin quietly, in the middle of ordinary days, while everything appears normal to others, while responsibilities are still being handled, while conversations still happen, while life still moves forward. Yet beneath all of that movement, there is a weight that does not fully leave, a sense of being emotionally stretched, mentally tired, spiritually worn, not always in an obvious way, but in a persistent background presence that follows a person through the day. And what makes this kind of heaviness even more difficult is that it does not always have a clear explanation. Because sometimes it is not one problem, but many small ones collected over time. Disappointments that were never fully processed, expectations that quietly faded, worries that never found resolution, prayers that were whispered but still feel unanswered. And over time, these small pieces begin to form something larger inside the soul, something that cannot simply be ignored anymore. There are days when a person can still function, still smile, still meet what is required of them, and yet feel internally disconnected from peace, as if joy requires effort, as if rest feels incomplete, as if the mind never fully steps away from what it is carrying. And even in silence, there is no true silence, because the thoughts continue moving, continuing to remind, continuing to weigh. And perhaps the most difficult part is that many people go through this without ever expressing it, because it is not dramatic enough to be noticed, not visible enough to be questioned, and so it remains internal, hidden beneath normal routines, carried quietly between one responsibility and another, until the heart itself begins to feel like it is walking through life with more weight than strength. But even here, in this quiet heaviness that no one else fully sees, there is already something deeper happening, something that begins not with answers, but with awareness. The recognition that the heart was never meant to carry everything alone, and that what feels heavy is not a sign of failure, but a sign that something within is asking for rest, for release, for help beyond what human strength can provide. There is a slow realization that comes to many hearts, not suddenly, but gradually, almost imperceptibly, when the effort of holding everything together begins to feel heavier than the situations themselves, when trying to remain strong becomes its own kind of exhaustion. When maintaining control over life starts to feel like carrying something that never truly becomes lighter, no matter how long it is held. It often begins with small internal signs, moments where patience feels shorter than usual, where rest does not feel fully restorative, where the mind keeps returning to unresolved thoughts even in quiet moments, and where the body is present but the inner self feels slightly distant, as if part of the person is always still processing something that was never fully set down. And over time, this state becomes familiar. Not because it is healthy, but because it becomes routine. A way of existing where carrying becomes normal, where worry becomes background noise, where emotional fatigue becomes something to adapt to rather than address, until a person no longer remembers what it feels like to be completely unburdened inside. There are situations that add to this weight in ways that are not always visible, responsibilities that extend beyond capacity, expectations that quietly accumulate, memories that still carry emotional charge, fears about what is coming next, and regrets about what cannot be changed, and all of these things begin to occupy space within the heart at the same time, creating an internal environment that rarely feels fully at rest. And in that space, something begins to shift in perception, not necessarily in circumstances, but in understanding. The recognition that human strength has limits, that emotional endurance is not infinite, that the soul was not designed to sustain constant internal pressure without release, and that even faith, when misunderstood as self-reliance, can become another form of burden instead of relief. Because faith was never meant to be the act of holding everything together alone. It was never intended to be a silent agreement to endure without help. It was always an invitation into relationship, into presence, into surrender, into a different way of carrying life that does not depend solely on human capacity. And slowly, this realization begins to open space within the heart. Space to question not only what is being carried, but how long it has been carried without rest, and whether this was ever meant to be held in isolation in the first place. There is a kind of weight that rarely gets noticed by others because it does not announce itself loudly. It does not always change how a person looks on the outside. It does not always interfere with daily responsibilities in ways that are immediately visible. Yet it remains present all the same, shaping thoughts in private moments, influencing emotions in subtle ways, and following a person even into silence. It is the kind of weight formed not by one single moment, but by accumulation. Small disappointments that were never fully processed, conversations that left emotional residue, expectations that slowly shifted over time, situations that required strength when there was little strength left to give, and gradually these experiences do not remain separate. They begin to merge inside the heart, forming an internal burden that is carried almost unconsciously. And so life continues outwardly, but inwardly there is a different experience happening at the same time, where even rest is accompanied by thought, even quiet is filled with processing. Even ordinary moments carry a subtle background tension that never fully disappears, as if the mind has learned to stay alert, even when nothing is actively happening. A person can appear completely fine while carrying a heart that has been fighting silent battles for a long time, learning how to function without fully feeling rested, learning how to respond without fully feeling present, learning how to continue without fully feeling whole, until this way of existing becomes so familiar that it is no longer questioned. And yet, even if the world cannot see it, even if others do not notice it, even if it has become something familiar in daily life, the soul still knows when it has been holding too much for too long. And that awareness, gentle but persistent, begins to open the possibility that there might be another way to live. One that does not depend entirely on silent endurance. Because even beneath all of this quiet survival, there is something within that resists the idea that constant inner strain is normal. A subtle awareness that begins to surface in still moments, suggesting that perhaps life was never meant to be experienced as ongoing internal pressure without relief. Because even if everything continues externally, something internally begins to question the weight itself. Not in rebellion, but in exhaustion. Not in confusion, but in quiet recognition that carrying everything alone was never truly sustainable. And in that recognition, a small but meaningful shift begins to form, where the heart starts to consider that what it has been holding might not need to be held in the same way anymore, and that there may be a different way of existing that does not require constant inner endurance. There comes a moment in a person's life when everything still looks functional on the outside. Work continues, conversations happen, responsibilities are met, life moves forward in a way that appears normal to everyone watching. Yet internally something has been quietly shifting for a long time. A slow accumulation of weight that does not announce itself loudly, but settles gradually in the heart, in the thoughts, in the way a person wakes up and immediately feels the presence of everything they are carrying before the day even begins. It is not always one specific event that creates this state. It is more often the repetition of small burdens that were never fully released, concerns that were never fully resolved, emotions that were never fully processed, and expectations that were never fully met. And over time, these things do not remain isolated. They begin to merge, forming an invisible pressure that follows a person even in silence, even in rest, even in moments that were supposed to bring relief. And so life continues, but something inside begins to change in subtle ways. Joy becomes less spontaneous, not because it disappears completely, but because it now has to pass through layers of exhaustion before it can be felt. Peace becomes more fragile, easier to disturb, harder to hold, and even simple moments start to feel slightly heavier than they should be, as if the mind never fully settles, always partially occupied with what still needs to be handled, solved, or endured. There are burdens that cannot be seen by the people around us. They do not appear in the way we speak. They do not always change the way we smile. They are not always visible in the way we function in daily life. Yet they travel with us everywhere we go. They sit quietly beside us in ordinary moments. They follow us into rooms where no one asks how we are really doing, and they remain present even after the world becomes silent. Especially then, when there is nothing left to distract the mind from what it has been carrying. And perhaps the most difficult part is that a person can still appear completely fine while carrying a heart that has been fighting silent battles for months, sometimes years, learning how to adapt to pressure without breaking, learning how to smile through exhaustion, learning how to answer "I'm okay" when something inside feels far from okay, until even that contradiction begins to feel normal, as if this is simply how life is supposed to be lived. But there is a point where the soul begins to recognize the cost of this constant holding, not in a dramatic collapse, but in a quiet realization that something within has been working endlessly without rest, something has been carrying without release, something has been holding tension for far too long, and no amount of distraction can fully silence that awareness anymore. And in that quiet awareness, something gentle begins to emerge, not as pressure, not as correction, but as an invitation to stop pretending that strength means carrying everything alone, to stop confusing endurance with healing, to stop believing that survival is the same as peace, because beneath all of it, beneath the effort, beneath the control, beneath the quiet attempts to manage what feels unmanageable, there is still a deeper truth waiting to be remembered, that the human heart was never designed to hold the weight of everything it fears, everything it regrets, and everything it cannot change. There is a moment in every weary heart when the weight does not simply feel heavy anymore, but begins to feel unnecessary to carry alone, as if something within starts to quietly recognize that all this effort, all this holding, all this internal resistance was never meant to be permanent. And in that recognition, a different kind of awareness begins to emerge, not loud, not urgent, but steady and deeply personal. It is the awareness that you were never asked to become strong enough for everything life would bring, never asked to hold every outcome in your hands, never asked to anticipate every loss or prevent every pain. And yet somewhere along the way, many people begin to live as if that is exactly what is required of them, as if peace depends entirely on their ability to manage what was never fully under their control. And in that place, where effort has been stretched beyond comfort and the soul has grown tired of constant internal vigilance, the invitation of God becomes something entirely different. Not another demand placed upon an already tired heart, but a call into something deeper than effort, deeper than control, deeper than self-managed strength. Come to me, not when everything is resolved, not when you finally feel ready, not when you have figured everything out, but come as you are, with the weight still present, with the mind still restless, with the heart still processing what it does not fully understand. Because rest in God is not the absence of problems, and it is not the removal of responsibility. It is the presence of something greater than the burden itself. A stability that does not depend on circumstances changing first. A peace that does not require everything to be fixed before it can be experienced. And slowly, as this truth begins to settle, something inside starts to loosen, not all at once, not perfectly, but gradually, like a grip that has been clenched for too long finally beginning to release. Not because the situation disappeared, but because the heart stopped trying to hold it all in isolation. There is a different kind of strength that begins to form in that space, not the strength of endurance alone, but the strength of surrender, the strength of no longer pretending that everything depends entirely on you, the strength of allowing God to be present in what feels too heavy to explain. And in that surrender, something quiet but profound begins to happen. Not a dramatic shift in circumstances, but a shift in burden, where what once felt like something you had to carry alone begins to feel like something you are no longer carrying by yourself, because you were never meant to carry it alone, and you were never meant to find peace through exhaustion. And you were never meant to measure your life by how much weight you can silently endure. You were meant to walk with God, and in that walking there is a rest that does not depend on escape, but on presence. A rest that meets you exactly where you are, and gently reminds you that you do not have to hold everything in order to be held. Before you continue with your day, before your mind returns to everything that still needs attention, before you go back to carrying what you have been carrying for so long, there is something important for you to hear in this moment. Something simple, but deeply needed. You are not alone in what you are facing, even if it has felt that way at times, even if the silence has been long, even if the answers have not come as quickly as you hoped. Your life has never been outside the awareness of God, not for a single moment, not even in the parts you do not know how to explain. And maybe you do not need more pressure right now. Maybe you do not need more instructions. Maybe you do not need to figure everything out today. Perhaps what your heart truly needs is not another burden to carry, but a place to finally lay it down. So in this moment, wherever you are, whether sitting, lying down, or simply pausing for a few quiet seconds, allow yourself to breathe a little deeper. Not because everything is resolved, but because you are allowed to rest even while things are still unfolding. And as you do, let this be a moment of surrender, not forced, not heavy, but honest, a quiet turning of the heart toward God, just as you are, without needing to present anything different, without needing to hold anything together. Let us pray. Lord, in this moment, I come before you not with perfection, but with honesty, not with strength, but with a heart that has grown tired from carrying more than it knows how to hold. You see what I cannot fully explain. You understand the weight that does not always have words, and you know the places where I have been trying to stay strong for too long. Tonight, I lay down what I have been carrying, the thoughts that have worn me down, the worries that have followed me in silence, the emotions I have not known how to process. And I ask you to take what I can no longer manage on my own. Teach my heart how to rest without fear, how to trust without control, how to let go without feeling lost, and how to believe that I am not forgotten even in my weakest moments. Where I have been tense, bring peace. Where I have been overwhelmed, bring stillness. Where I have been exhausted, bring renewal that I cannot create by myself. And even if nothing around me changes immediately, let something within me begin to soften. Let my heart learn again what it means to feel held, not because everything is perfect, but because you are present. Thank you for not turning away from me in my weariness. Thank you for not demanding more than I can give. And thank you for being a place of rest when everything else feels uncertain. I choose in this moment to place what I cannot control into your hands, not as a final escape, but as a daily surrender. One breath at a time, one moment at a time. And as I go forward from here, remind me gently again and again that I do not walk through life alone. Amen.